Hi class, I'm Garrett O'Callahan. For my final research paper, I decided to research Title IX. Um, Title IX gives equal rights, or it fights for equal rights for female athletes in college and high school. Um, I picked this topic because it relates to sports. Sports has always been a big part of my life, and I have heard about Title IX through my coaches and the administration in different meetings that I've had here at HNU, but I didn't know as much as I wanted to know about it. So I decided to do more research on it and the history and how it came to be and how it actually has changed gender equality in college sports. I'm studying Title IX because I want to find out if it has changed gender neutrality in collegiate sports. So some history of Title IX. During the late 1950s and 60s, it was very difficult for women to receive financial support to go to college and achieve higher education. Most families invested most of their money to put their sons through college first, because at the time males were seen as the supporters of the household. Their daughter's education was seen second because of the gender wage gap, how females weren't getting paid as much, and the daughters were just expected to get married and have children. There were very few scholarships available for women, and it was even more difficult for them to work. There were two federal student aid programs, the National Defense Education Act and the Higher Education Act of 1958 and 1965 that were passed in hopes to break down the financial barriers holding back women from attaining a higher education. These two acts attempted to lower the cost of attending school so families could put their sons and daughters through schooling. These two were successful in the financial aspect of lowering the wage or the cost of going to school. However, schools were still turning away females based on their sex. More schools wanted to have males so they could put them out into the workplace to make more money, because the gender wage gap was still an issue. Most females had to receive higher test scores and grades than males to get into institutions. There were males getting less grades, or worse grades and lower test scores, and they were getting in over some females that had better scores. So it put a pressure on females, and there's a pretty bad imbalance. Sex discrimination was pretty big during the 70s. So a lot of people were beginning to challenge it, and a lot of instances were being noted in the educational department, and a trend was being noticed. During the 70s, feminism arose in the United States. Men dominated the workforce, schools, and economy, and feminists began to protest this imbalance. In 1970, the nationwide Women's Strike for Equality took place on August 26, 1970. This is where women set up outside of businesses along the streets to protest the unfairness and inequality that was currently being taking place. Dating back to 1923, there was an amendment written by Alice Paul, which said men and women shall have equal rights throughout the United States and every place in its jurisdiction. Alice Paul tried to push this through, really stressed, one of the first feminist speakers to come out. Her amendment was rewritten in the 40s, renamed the Alice Paul Amendment, which later became the Equal Rights Amendment of 1972. When the Equal Rights Amendment was passed in 1972, it was required to be ratified by 3/4 of the states by 1979. This failed to do so, and it was later not passed. However, it opened opportunities for figures such as Bernie Sandler, Edith Green, and Birch Bayh to fight for women's participation in educational institutions. The Equal Rights Amendment laid out some ground for other people to build off of. These three people that I mentioned above, Bernie Sandler, Edith Green, and Birch Bayh, were three important speakers for gender equality in education. Bernie Sandler had a personal experience with gender discrimination. She worked with an assistant director of the U.S. Department of Labor Office of Federal Contract Compliance and attempted to challenge the sex discrimination she experienced. She was she used Executive Order 11246, which prohibited discrimination based on sex, race, or religion in hiring and employment decisions. She was turned away from a position because of her gender. She didn't think it was fair, so she took it to court, and she actually won. Sandler's complaint was being sent out, and a representative in Congress from Oregon named Edith Green saw Sandler's complaint and became interested in the movement. Green, the original author of Title IX, distinguished herself as a capable, she saw it as a good opportunity to take the inequalities to court. His wife had firsthand experience of the discrimination. His wife was very intelligent. She applied to the University of Virginia and was turned away without really any reasoning. Her application came back and it said, "Women need not apply," the exact words. So she felt that she was cheated out of a education, which she definitely was, and her husband, being in Congress, wanted to take this and fight for this case so other people, such as his wife, wouldn't lose out on the opportunity for an education. On June 23rd, 1972, Congress enacted Title IX of the Education Amendments. It began with, "No person in the United States shall, on the basis of sex, be excluded from participation in, be denied of, or be subjected to discrimination under any education program or activity receiving federal financial assistance." So basically every school getting money from the federal government was required to follow this principle. There were some other events and figures who strengthened Title IX's influence. 6 months before the passing of Title IX, the American Intercollegiate Athletics for Women was started by a former teacher and coach at Madison College, Dr. Leotis Morrison. This association gave women opportunity to form sports teams at their institution and compete against other schools, because the NCAA only had male sports at the time. So this association established national championships for women's sports. The AIWA formed a regional organization, first Southern schools were involved from Virginia to Texas. Um, then they started expanding, they started gaining more schools. Um, by targeting a smaller part of institutions, athletics, it opened the door for females to participate and also receive their degree. Um, the AIWA's influence expanded to over 961 institutions by the late 1970s. It had become very popular and was becoming more popular than the NCAA in terms of female sports. And the NCAA felt threatened by this. In response, the NCAA began to offer championships for women, and many schools left the AIAA to join, or AIWA to join the NCAA because the NCAA gave better facilities and provided more funding to the athletic programs. In 1982, the AIWA was disbanded, and all schools involved ended up joining the NCAA. So the AIWA is really important because it gave the NCAA kind of it forced them to provide sports for women, and then with the Title IX compliance already in order, it gave the schools that had the women's sports, it gave them more opportunity now. Another event, a couple events that helped were Bobby Riggs. He was a famous male tennis star. He was challenged by the top-ranked women's tennis player Margaret Court in an exhibition game. He won easily and was not talking good about female athletes after that. There was another challenger, Billie Jean King. She was a very talented tennis player. Bobby Riggs knew that she was talented and possibly more talented than himself, but he was sure that when put in front of a big audience and being nationally televised, that she would fold under pressure, like all women do in his mind. There was a record-breaking crowd of 34,472 people that came out to watch in the apparent battle of the sexes game. King went along to actually beat Riggs in 3 straight sets. It was a pretty easy win, and this kind of showed on national television that females can compete with males in sports. It was the first instance to be seen on national television. Another important figure, Catherine Switzer, entered the 1967 Boston Marathon, which was not, females were not allowed to participate in, so she entered with just her initials. She ended up running the whole race and finishing it. After a few different times she was tried to, or the head of the Boston Marathon tried to remove her physically, and she was with her coach and boyfriend at the time, and they helped fend off him and allowed her to finish the race, and she was publicly recognized for that as well. These 2 instances were the most important to me personally, although it doesn't relate to college sports. It showed that women deserved an opportunity to play sports, and so the main athletics was college, because college was a stepping stone for professionals, and showing at the professional level that yes, females can be developed the same as males in athletics and can compete, then it gave colleges more opportunity to provide women with sports. So some statistics from Title IX, the positives, that in 1972 out of the 200,000 athletes, only 30,000 were women. This was a low number, and after 1994, when 9 sports were added to the list of female sports, basketball, softball, soccer, beach volleyball, rowing, ice hockey, water polo, and bowling, once these were offered, females began flooding in to play and compete. Um, from 19, oh, whoops. Um, the Equity and Athletics Disclosure Act surveyed 703 Division I through III institutions between the years of 1995 and 2002. They found that the institution gained about one female team each year, and on average 27 female athletes, 39 in Division I specifically. In 1971, again, there were only about 30,000 female collegiate athletes, and by 2000, or the year 2000, the number increased over 400% to about 151,000 athletes. Not only did it raise the number of athletes, but also lower the dropout rate and increase the number of women pursuing and receiving degrees. Some negatives, once Title IX became more influential at universities, the institutions began merging male and female athletic departments. This wasn't very beneficial for female sports because the male head of the athletic department the head of the male athletic department made most of the decisions. These decisions including hiring coaches, and more male coaches had experience over the female coaches applying strictly because the females were unable to participate as long as the males did. In 1978, the percentage of female coaches was about 90%. Up until today, they're around 20% of coaches in college are female. Although the percentage did drop, more teams have been established since 1970, so I would say that the number has risen of the number of coaches. Some negatives, although Title X does promote equal funding, women's teams receive about 41% of the money spent on head coaching salaries, recruiting dollars, and overall athletic expenses. This has been viewed as a reason why Title IX has not helped female sports. There's still an inequality, but I think after doing my research, this money imbalance, especially in Division I institutions, is because of the football teams. They generate a lot of money. Each institution, for example, in 2017, averaged about $63 million in revenue. Football alone contributed to about $33 million of that $63 million. And with the football team having a higher roster than most sports, they receive more scholarship money. They receive more funding strictly because they have pads. They have to rent buses for travel. They have to fly sometimes for Division I's and Twos. You pay for hotels. Just the expenses are a little bit higher for a football team. So, when deciding whether or not Title IX has changed gender neutrality in sports, I believe that Title IX has made a big difference. The supporting events, such as Billy King beating Bobby Riggs, the 1967 Boston Marathon, those and the AIWA all helped Title IX become what it is now, and actually has influenced women's sports greatly. Females are given far more opportunities than they were in the 70s, although it's still a lower number than I think they deserve. We're going in the right direction because it has only been 40 to 50 years that Title IX has been enacted, and there's still schools not complying, and little by little more schools will start to buy in and give more opportunities to female sports, because that's why male sports are so popular. A lot of their funds come from their TV time. I think if they were to increase maybe money given to female sports for television time, that could increase the overall popularity of the sport. It isn't watched very frequently, but it's only because uh, they aren't shown a lot on TV. So my one improvement that I could give to Title IX is to give more funds to the female sports for TV time. But other than that, I think Title IX has been good for gender equality. It's given women a lot more opportunities than they had in the past, and I hope to see more improvements as time goes on. Thanks for watching.